Terry is peacefully cycling into Shelby Springs, Louisiana, until some racist officers, Evan Marston and Steve Lan, knock him off his cycle. Before Terry can even react, they pin him to the ground at gunpoint and report over the radio that they have successfully ended a pursuit. The former Marine tries to explain to them that he never saw them coming and that he had his hands free, plugged into his ears. When the poor guy asks repeatedly about why he is being cuffed up, the officers put up a false accusation that he has stolen a bike and that when they tried to pull him over, he fled.
He tried to pull you over and you fled. Now, come on, get up.
Later, Officer Evan demands to search his backpack, but Terry initially refuses. After threatening to bring in a canine unit and drag the search out for over an hour, they pressure him until he finally agrees. Inside the parcel, they discover $36,000 in cash and immediately label it as drug money. Terry explains that the money is legitimate.
It's a lot of cash you got on you.
It's not illegal.
The drug currency is illegal.
He says he recently sold his car and his share of a restaurant and plans to use $10,000 to bail out his cousin, Mike Simmons, who is arrested for possession of some weed, while the rest will go toward buying a truck.
10 is for bail, and the rest, we're gonna buy a truck and haul boats.
The officers tell him they will let him go with a warning, but will seize his cash, which he will have to fight for in court. When Terry protests and asks them to verify from Canlong Chinese restaurant, they threaten him with felony charges. Poor Terry is left with no choice but to continue on his way to the courthouse. There, he visits the courthouse clerk, Elliot, who asks him why he looks all injured and messed up. Terry explains that the cops are to blame for this and that he has lost all his money. Hearing this, Elliot refuses to help, which makes Terry anxious because if he doesn't bail Mike out soon, they are going to shift him to the state jail, where he is going to be in danger from some gangsters. Just then, Elliot's fellow employee, Summer McBride, shows up and gets Terry to take her to a cafe to discuss his issue. She explains that what happened to him is called civil asset forfeiture, and all the police officers needed was suspicion and not any real drugs. She further adds how hard it will be for him to get the money back, upon which Terry requests her help. Summer tells our guy that he is on his own as the fight for his money is going to take him a year, but instead, she promises to prepare the paperwork in case he can arrange the bail money before his cousin's transfer. When she is curious about the shifting to the state prison part, Terry explains that Mike got messed up as a witness on a capital murder charge against a really powerful gangster who is now in the state prison because of him.
Out east, got into some deep shit. Ended up a cooperating witness on a capital murder charge.
This clearly explains why the moment Mike enters the place, he is done for. Summer sympathizes and wishes Terry best of luck, while Terry gets his former business partner Lou on a call. Lou jokingly asks if Terry is suddenly feeling regret and wants to come back to the restaurant, but Terry explains that he has landed himself in serious trouble, and the kind man eventually agrees to arrange the money for him. That night, Terry goes to a riverside where he skillfully catches a fish and grills it up. He decides to visit the Shelby Springs Police Department the next morning. At the station, he runs into Officer Jessica Sims and attempts to outsmart the officers by reporting the seized cash as stolen. When he gives her Evan's badge number, Officer Jessica politely excuses herself for a moment and quietly passes the information to Steve, who has just walked in. The police chief Sandy Burns soon arrives as well, and he and Steve confront Terry together. Chief Sandy insists that everything that happened was completely legal in every way, and even claims that Terry should feel grateful because the officers treated him with respect.
You've been treated with more than due respect.
He then warns Terry that he could easily be arrested on felony charges if he continues what Sandy describes as harassment toward his officers. Sandy then notices that the conversation is being recorded and tells Terry to shut it down and leave the station immediately. Terry instead asks to see his cousin, but the chief refuses right away, and at that point, the former Marine presents the evidence related to his money. The chief of police dismisses it and calmly tells him that if he wants to show evidence, he can always bring it to court. When everything fails, Terry proposes to drop the whole matter if they agree to give him back just 10 grand and keep the rest. Sandy agrees to resolve the issue and asks Terry to come back on Monday, where he promises that he can see his cousin. That night, while it's raining, Terry takes out his evidence paper and burns it. The story then progresses to Monday, when Terry arrives at the station while peacefully riding his bicycle. There he learns that Officer Sandy has played him and has arranged for the prison bus to leave early.
You said I could see him.
At 9 a.m. You're 3 minutes late.
When Terry complains, the chief replies that it is his own fault as he is 3 minutes late. Terry catches up on his bike by taking shortcuts through the woods and tells Mike to immediately request protective custody as he arrives at the state jail, explaining how he is as good as cooked if he doesn't stay low. Terry then contacts Lou for the promised cash, upon which he learns that the police have raided his restaurant upon Officer Sandy's request, and this all happened because Terry had messed up big time by implicating his business in his statement. Terry promises Lou that he will fix his blunder before hanging up. He then goes straight to Summer and explains that the chief has somehow moved up the shifting and that his cousin is on the bus as they speak. Summer takes pity on this happening, yet she asks the guy to go away using the back door as she is in dire need of her job and doesn't want to get into any trouble. Terry gets extremely disappointed and enraged, but as he is leaving, Summer comes up to him explaining that her hands were tied as there were so many spies in there. She says that she has checked Mike's file and in doing so found dozens of cases with misdemeanor defendants like Mike being held in jail for exactly 90 days. She argues that there's something fishy going on and no way that this is normal. Summer, however, does admit that the part about her job being important was not an act, explaining that she has a daughter to take care of. Just then, someone calls her and she has to go immediately, while excusing that she was on a vaping break. That afternoon, while Sandy has his team digging up details on Terry, the man himself shows up. Sandy gets slightly worried when he realizes Terry is a military man, but he relaxes when Steve suggests that the ex-military guy might not have any real combat experience after confirming from his sources. Terry waits outside until the chief steps out to receive a complaint about the broken deal. Sandy argues that Terry's offer was extremely unreasonable and insults him, saying people like him aren't even entitled to make an offer. As Terry is gaining the upper hand in the argument, Jessica gets her Wi-Fi back on and informs Steve that Terry has been enrolled in the Marine Corps martial arts program.
I think he's on the Wikipedia page, teaching jujitsu to the 6th Marine Regiment.
Meaning the man they have messed with is a close-quarters combat expert. Steve senses trouble and quickly grabs a gun to shoot Terry. Sandy realizes that he has misjudged and takes out his own gun, but Terry overpowers the two as he takes the chief at gunpoint and subdues both of them. Terry takes the two and heads into the station while locking all the rookie police outside. He slams off the telephone and forces them to make Jessica come out of hiding. Jessica comes crawling out and is forced to cuff her own officers with their cuffs. Terry then gets her to get him his $10,000, while he still leaves behind the $26,000 as he originally promised. After he is done with this, Terry makes Jessica put up an act of faking his arrest while he makes her personally escort him to safety. He then heads over to the courthouse and posts bail with Summer's help, who makes the process speed up. Terry keeps looking at the mirror, thinking someone would come after him until Summer gets suspicious and asks if he hurt someone. Terry replies that he barely touched the skin, and by that time the bail process has been completed on the courthouse end. Just then, officers show up, and the former Marine is captured while being painfully tased and pinned to the ground. Terry is then taken to a catacomb, which is now simply a storage room covered with mold. There, a paramedic is called in to check the former Marine. The paramedic tells Terry that he is now doing fine and should get himself a tetanus shot. Afterwards, Terry is hoping to get to the same prison as his cousin, but instead, he is taken somewhere in a police car. On their way, Chief Sandy shows up and Evan requests that Terry hear what the chief has to say. Sandy explains that the officers never would have crossed Terry if they had known he was a highly trained Marine.
Today should have never happened. If I'd known who you were, maybe it wouldn't have.
Terry, however, is losing patience and demands to know where they are taking him. Sandy explains the sad truth that this police station is the only one left in the area that still runs on its own. They are overwhelmed with work, and Evans alone handled over 600 reports last year. But instead of receiving a budget increase for their efforts, the town slashed their funding. Now the station is broken. This financial desperation has turned the department into a machine fueled by civil asset forfeiture, where they seize cash from travelers just to keep the station running. The car then stops at Samaritan Hospital Center, and Chief Sandy tosses over Terry's remaining cash and removes his cuffs. Sandy then elaborates that Mike was stabbed shortly after arriving at prison, and they aren't aware of his current condition. Terry bursts out in madness, arguing that he already told them this was going to happen. Sandy asks Terry to cool down and gives him two options. He either goes away with the cash and never comes back to this town again, or they will arrest him and put him in jail for 30 years for having attacked them. Terry forcefully accepts the offer as his cousin cousin Mike gets flown by a helicopter to the hospital, but when he sees his cousin, he is already dead. Terry then asks Summer for a ride so that he can pick up the truck he was going to get. On their way, Summer shows the former Marine the suspicious cases she was talking about, but Terry refuses to help her investigate them, arguing that he can do nothing about her corrupt town and never came here to set things right in the first place. Instead, all he wanted was for his cousin to escape death, and no matter what he tried, he had failed. Before leaving, Terry provides Summer with his contact information in case of emergencies and appreciates her help with his problem. That night, Summer finds out that someone has broken into her house and injected her with drugs in the middle of the night. She quickly calls Terry and gets him for help after realizing that the police are behind this too. Terry quickly drives to her house and breaks in the back door when she doesn't respond to his shouting. He finds her in the shower, alive yet terrified. When Terry insists on getting her help from some other city, she tells him that she will live through this, as this is the same drug she used to struggle with in the past. She badly wants the custody of her girl back, but if this gets found out, she is certain she will lose the custody of her child again. He prepares her oatmeal, over which she tells him her tragic story of how her husband proved to the court how awful a mother she was and took her kid. Terry helps her get back to work to avoid any suspicions. However, the corruption is much deeper than they have anticipated. As soon as Summer gets into the courthouse, the town judge orders an immediate drug test for her, making it clear that he is teamed up with the greedy Chief Sandy. She cries as she gives her sample as the thought of losing her child haunts her. Meanwhile, Terry gets pulled over again by Officer Steve before he can attempt to escape the town. Terry apologizes, saying that he had to come back for a friend as it was an emergency, but the officer already knows that it was Summer. Even though Terry says this won't happen again, Steve, in an attempt to murder him on the spot, opens fire. The former Marine, however, is way too skilled to go down this easily and fights back. He tasers the officer with his own taser and drives away into the woods while Steve keeps shouting to his underlings to shoot at his tires. Terry drives as far as he can go before abandoning his vehicle under a bridge. He then receives a call from Summer and tells her that he is coming to see her. Summer tells him that she too has been visited by the police and they have warned her to leave the town and stay away from the former Marine. When Terry asks who told her that, Summer explains that it was her secret friend in the police who was also following them for their safety yesterday while she was driving him away. Terry then asks her to go to the Chinese restaurant owned by his partner Liu, where Summer finds him being patched up by the owner, who turns out to be a seasoned medic from the Korean War. She has brought the burner phones Terry asked her for, and the two now plan their next move. Terry, who did want to involve himself with the town's mess, now wants to avenge his cousin. Sitting in her car, Terry dubs her police contact Serpico, wondering if they will provide further aid. Summer argues against expecting more, explaining that the officer already took a massive risk by warning her. The two then break into the judge's place and pressure him to reveal the truth about the ongoing corruption. The judge admits that he has been involved in the scheme and has been assisting Chief Sandy for quite some time. He further confirms their suspicions by explaining that since the police department was broke and considered uninsurable, Sandy and he created a legal method to take money through the law called civil asset forfeiture. They would hold people on minor charges for exactly 90 days, just long enough for any police dash cam footage that could prove their innocence to be deleted. The defendants would fight for their money, but every time someone tried, they lost. The judge has sided with them because he was also receiving a share of the corruption, and the state had no objections either, making this legal since part of the money went to government funding. After confirming everything, the duo heads over to steal the remaining recordings which have been kept in the catacombs of the courthouse, and they would need them as evidence to expose the cops. They break in and find the SD cards, but the police seem to be one step ahead, having already started a fire to destroy the evidence. Terry manages to secure the memory cards and escape, then reignites the fire to avoid suspicion, while Summer is caught by the officers as she tries to retrieve her urine sample. Unluckily, she is kidnapped and taken to a shady location, but Terry is already on their trail. He crashes into the police car where one of the officers has stayed behind, subdues him, and uses the police radio to contact Sandy. The chief proposes another trade, offering to exchange Summer for the memory cards at Rebel Ridge at dawn. The next day at dawn, the cops are already there waiting for Terry, who never shows up, as he makes it clear that he is not going to fall for the same trick twice. While the cops wait at Rebel Ridge, Sandy receives a call from Terry, who tells him that unlike the past 2 days, he has never gotten his hands dirty in any street fight. Terry uses his truck to smash open the back wall of the police building. He subdues the money-hungry chief with non-lethal beanbag rounds and begins loading weapons from the armory. When Officer Jessica Sims arrives, Terry initially trusts her because he mistakes her for the Serpico that Summer mentioned to him. However, Jessica turns on him and detains Terry just as the other officers return to the station. Officer Steve assumes they have completely won and stomps on the memory cards, smashing them into pieces, making sure that he has destroyed all evidence. He also admits that he has dosed Summer with drugs again, so there will be no witnesses around while Terry is taken down, putting her in serious danger and even risking an overdose. This is when the real Serpico finally steps forward and points a gun directly at his own colleagues. It is revealed that Officer Evan Marston was the one who had been secretly helping Summer all along. When he speaks up to protest the cruelty and corruption of the department, the chief reacts violently and shoots him in the leg, showing just how far he will go to maintain control. Even after Terry gets surrounded, he refuses to give up. He uses smoke grenades in his Marine training to take out the officers one by one without making them kick the bucket. Following the instructions that Evan gives him, Terry successfully activates the siren on a police cruiser, which triggers a system that saves the previous 3 minutes of dash cam footage. With this, the corruption is finally being recorded live. Terry then moves quickly to rescue half-conscious Summer from the back of Steve's car and lifts Evan into the cruiser. As they make their escape, a high-speed chase begins, with Sandy ordering Jessica to intercept Terry, but she ultimately makes the decision to end the wrongdoing rather than follow orders blindly. Jesse chooses to do the right thing and crashes into Sandy's car instead, allowing Terry to escape. The story finally comes to a close as Terry arrives at the hospital, where Summer and Evan are rushed to the emergency department. Terry sits alone in the waiting room as he holds the camera storage drive, which will be the evidence that he is going to use to finally bring Sandy Burns' schemes to an end.